Let me ask you something. Think about the last time you felt genuinely stressed, not because of a deadline or money, but because of a person. Someone said something that got under your skin. Someone acted in a way that made no sense to you. Someone you love keeps doing the same thing over and over. And no matter how many conversations you've had, how many times you've explained yourself, how many subtle hints or not so subtle arguments you've started, nothing changes. And you're tired. Not just physically tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. Here's what nobody tells you about that feeling. The exhaustion is not coming from them. It's coming from you. Specifically, it's coming from the energy you keep spending trying to change, fix, manage, or control someone who never asked to be changed. And today, I want to talk about why that habit is one of the most expensive things you can do with your life, and what happens when you finally stop. Human beings have a deep psychological need for control. This is not a character flaw. It's coded in our DNA. Our brains are prediction machines. They're constantly scanning the environment, trying to anticipate what happens next so they can keep us safe. When things feel unpredictable, the brain registers that as a threat. And people, real, complicated, emotionally messy people, are about as unpredictable as it gets. So when someone in your life behaves in a way you didn't expect, or says something hurtful, or holds a belief you find completely irrational, your brain doesn't just note that and move on. It activates. It starts problem solving. It starts building a case. It starts rehearsing conversations you haven't had yet. It starts drafting the perfect argument that will finally make them understand. And this is where most of us live, in that rehearsal space, playing out imaginary conversations in the shower, replaying what they said, crafting the response that would have been perfect 3 days ago. Psychologists call this rumination, and research consistently shows it's one of the strongest predictors of anxiety, depression, and chronic stress. Here's the brutal truth. You are not stressed because of what that person did. You are stressed because of how much mental real estate you have given them since. And yet, we keep doing it. Because part of you genuinely believes that if you think hard enough, argue well enough, or care intensely enough, you can change someone. You can't. And the sooner you accept that, the freer you become. Now, I'm not saying people never change. They do. You've probably changed in significant ways over the course of your life. But think about why you changed. Think about a belief you used to hold that you no longer hold, or a behavior you used to have that you've since outgrown. Did you change because someone pressured you into it? Or because someone argued with you enough times that you finally gave in? Or because someone guilted you, or nagged you, or made you feel bad about who you were? Probably not. Or if you did change under that kind of pressure, it was surface level, temporary. You went back to who you were the moment the pressure lifted. Real change, the deep kind, the lasting kind, happens from the inside. It happens when you have an experience that shifts your perspective. When you hit a wall that forces you to look at yourself differently, when your soul is ready. And the most important thing you need to understand is that the people in your life are on their own timeline. Their growth, their patterns, their limitations. Those were shaped by experiences you were not part of by a childhood. You didn't witness by wounds that formed before you ever met them when your father is dismissive, or your friend is unreliable, or your partner shuts down in conflict. They're not doing that at you. They're doing it from a place inside themselves that they may not even fully understand yet. Their behavior is a product of their entire history, not just your current relationship. This doesn't mean their behavior is acceptable. It doesn't mean you have to stay in every situation, but it does mean that trying to change them, rather than deciding how you want to respond, is a battle against forces that are much older and deeper than your current conflict. Every time you invest energy into trying to change someone else's behavior, you are withdrawing from your own life. Think of your attention and emotional energy as a currency, finite, valuable, and constantly being spent somewhere. When you obsess over why someone did what they did, you are spending that currency. When you try to engineer a conversation that will finally make them see things your way, you are spending that currency. When you feel resentment because someone is still being who they have always been, you are spending that currency. And what are you getting in return? Usually nothing, or worse, more conflict, more frustration, more distance. There's also a subtler cost that most people never notice. When you're constantly focused outward on other people's choices, behaviors, and emotions, you lose touch with your own. You stop noticing what you actually feel, independent of how they made you feel. You stop hearing your own needs, your own intuitions, your own quiet voice underneath all the noise. You become reactive instead of grounded. Every interaction with that person becomes charged. You're either braced for a problem or relieved that one didn't happen. And over time, this erodes something important in you, your sense of self, your inner stability, the feeling that you are okay regardless of what is happening around you. That's not a small thing to lose. Family is where most people struggle the most. Family is different from every other relationship in your life. You didn't choose these people. You were simply born into a dynamic that was already in motion. The roles, the patterns, the unspoken rules, all of it was established before you were old enough to question any of it. And so by the time you're an adult, you've had decades of training in how your family operates. You know exactly what your mother will say at Christmas. You know exactly how your brother will react when things don't go his way. You know which topics to avoid with your father, which buttons your sister presses, which family member will find a way to make things about themselves. You know all of this. And yet, there is still a part of you that hopes this time will be different. Here's the reframe. Your family has been the same since the day you were born. Not because they're broken, but because they're human, with deeply entrenched patterns that exist independent of you. Wishing they would suddenly become someone else is like wishing the ocean would stop having waves. The ocean is doing what oceans do. Your only real choice is this. Do you want to keep throwing yourself against those waves, exhausted and soaking? Or do you want to learn how to stand on the shore? That's not giving up on your family. That's growing up in relation to them. Now, I want to be precise here, because I think this concept gets misunderstood. You have to let be who they are. Letting people be who they are does not mean approving of everything they do. It doesn't mean becoming passive, or swallowing your feelings, or pretending nothing bothers you. It doesn't mean staying in toxic situations out of some spiritual sense of acceptance. What it means is this. You stop making their choices your emergency. You stop treating their opinions of you as facts you need to disprove. You stop having the same argument for the 14th time, hoping this time they'll finally admit you were right. You stop waiting for an apology that may never come before you. Allow yourself to move forward. It's the moment you decide, consciously, that their behavior is their responsibility, and your response is yours. This is where your power actually lives. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, wrote that everything can be taken from a person except the freedom to choose their own response to any given situation. If that holds true under those conditions, it holds true in your relationships. So if you're not pouring your energy outward, where does it go? It goes back to you. This sounds simple, but it is not. For many people, returning inward is unfamiliar territory. They've spent so long focused on managing other people's emotions, keeping the peace, reading the room, anticipating conflict, that they've lost the habit of listening to themselves. But this is where real change in you happens. When you come back to your own breath, your own thoughts, your own inner state, something interesting happens. The noise starts to quiet. The urgency fades. Problems that felt enormous from a reactive state look different when you're grounded. And from that place, you make better decisions. You speak more honestly because you're not reacting from fear or frustration. You set clearer boundaries because they come from self-respect rather than resentment. You show up in relationships with much more presence because you're not carrying the weight of trying to manage everyone in the room. There's a concept in Stoic philosophy, one of the oldest and most practical philosophical traditions in Western history, called the dichotomy of control. The Stoics divided the entire universe into two categories, things within your control and things outside it. Within your control, your thoughts, your intentions, your actions, your responses. Outside your control, everything else, including, very explicitly, other people. They didn't say ignore other people. They said don't hinge your peace on them. That distinction, peace that is unconditional, that doesn't require the world to rearrange itself first, is available to you right now. Here's something almost nobody talks about when they discuss letting go of control. When you stop trying to fix people, you actually respect them more. Think about what it implies when you're constantly trying to change someone. On some level, you're saying, "You are not okay as you are. You need to be different. You need to meet my standard of how a person should think, act, or feel." That's not love. That's management. When you genuinely release someone, when you stop needing them to be different, you're offering something far more rare, actual acceptance of who they are, separate from who you want them to be. And paradoxically, that is the environment in which people are most likely to change on their own, not because of pressure, because of safety. So letting go isn't just good for you. It may be the most generous thing you can do for the people around you. So here's where we land. The fastest way to lower your stress is not a supplement, not a productivity system, not even a better argument. It's the decision, made quietly, made repeatedly, to stop requiring other people to be different before you allow yourself to be at peace. It's one of the most active, courageous things a person can do, because it means giving up the story that your well-being depends on them. It means accepting that you cannot control the ocean, but you can decide where you stand in relation to it. Every day, you get to choose. You can spend your energy trying to rewrite someone else's story, or you can write your own. Come back to your breath. Come back to your own actions and choices. Come back to the one person in your life you actually have full influence over. That person is you, and that is more than enough to work with. Thank you for watching. See you next time.